May 29th, 2024 edition of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League Young Professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as webinars, Facebook, and Instagram Live. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. You want more? Visit us at nuljobsnetwork.com. Ton of information there as we're ramping up for the upcoming national conference in New Orleans, which will take place in July. But today's DCSS, Mentorship Dynamics, features two, dynamic people. We have Keisha Beverly Ebsen and Dr. Ryan Warner on the show. I guess we're ready to go. Keisha, welcome to the Digital Career Success Series.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here. Of course, I felt like I was tracking you down to make you part of this, but you're here. I'm excited. I saw the video. It was amazing. You told us that you're going to deliver everything we need pretty much today on Mentorship Dynamics. So if you don't mind, please tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
So I am Keisha Beverly Ebsen, Kenneth. I am the Senior Culture Program Manager for Microsoft Atlanta. I'm excited to be here. I have been in this industry of creating community and figuring out the best ways for all of us to advance in our careers for almost 20 years. I've worked in diversity and inclusion efforts and strategies. As I said, I'm in Atlanta, but I'm originally from New York. But I did live in Seattle, so I'm a fan of every city there is, West Coast, East Coast. I'm all coast. I'm all about us and our empowering opportunities that we have amongst each other. I'm also a strategic partner that works alongside lots of different entities. So if you ever have questions around that, let me know. And currently I'm engaging in coaching and figuring out how to help individuals to reach their success goals.
You know, again, really excited to have you on the platform. I know you have extensive experience mentoring, coaching, just providing support and being a resource to Black professionals. So we appreciate you. You're not going to say you're from New York without giving us a neighborhood. What you represent?
So I'm representing Elmont, New York. Elmont, also known as where everybody's now going to the concerts over at the UBS Stadium, but that's where I'm from, Elmont, New York. Really proud to be from Elmont, the other borough.
The other borough. I love it. Thank you so very much. Dr. Ryan Warner, pleasure having you on the show today, sir. Oh, know what? Let me add that Ryan is a member of the Black Box app family. I appreciate him for coming through. Check his podcast out in the Black Box app as well. Ryan, introduce yourself to the audience, please, sir.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here. I'm Ryan Warner. I'm a consulting psychologist. I'm an executive coach. I'm a professional speaker. I'm also the founder and CEO of RC Warner Consulting, in which we enhance wellness and inclusion in workplaces worldwide to maximize their performance. I'm also a husband. I'm a father. I was just telling Kenneth earlier that my twin girls turned 8 weeks yesterday, and also have a 3-year-old son. So, family is really important to me. Originally from the Chicago, Illinois area, currently live in Houston, Texas area. Lived here for the last couple of years. I'm also a United States Air Force military veteran. And ultimately, I'm really passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, and also work with high-level leaders to enhance their leadership development, improve their emotional intelligence so that they can thrive in their workplaces. So that's me. And yeah, really excited for this opportunity to talk about this important topic today.
Man, we're excited to have you here, of course, on this Memorial Day week. I want to thank you for your service, my friend.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate you. All right, let's get to it. Listen, we're here to speak about mentorship dynamics, and a big piece of that is building trust and connection, right? So let's discuss kind of how trust is foundational to mentorship, to exploring strategies, to building connections. Keisha, I'm gonna go to you with this one. Like, how big of a thing is it for you to really set a foundation of trust for people to kind of come to you looking for you to provide mentorship?
So it's on both parties, Kenneth, when I think about it. From the mentee's perspective, right? You want to build trust and trust who you're sharing your dreams with, who you're interested in sharing the opportunities of what you want your future to look like. And so you want to make sure that you have a trusted foundation. And then also for the mentor, right? The mentor is going to tell you their stories, their experiences. They're going to share with you the things that they've experienced in their career. And for that to be done in an open environment where both can really grow, there has to be a level of trust and connection between the two. Authenticity is important as well. You want to be authentic and honest in why you're building the relationship and why this is important to you and what you truly believe will come out of it. There'll be multiple things. And you mentioned the video I sent where we talked about like the personal development and the professional development. There's multiple levels to mentorship. And when we think about it, you start out with your mentor saying, hey, potentially I'm looking to, really enhance my opportunities at work, maybe to move up or to become a leader on my team. But in that process, there's so much more that can be gained, so much more leadership skills. Ryan mentioned his 8-week twins. I have 2 kids, Malia and Makai. They are 6 and 11. And when I think about, the relationship that I have in growing as a mother, right? Growing in those spaces, when you're working with someone who's been there and done that, you'll also learn from them on how to bring those things into your personal life.
Man, I love all of that actually. And as we're speaking about trust and connection and mentorship in general, I think sometimes we can provide mentorship even outside of a face-to-face connection. And we look to do that here on the Digital Career Success Series. So our audience is robust. They love to ask questions. I'm going to ask them to please drop their questions in the Q&A as they come about. And also let us know where you're from. Jump in the chat. Let us know what's going on. Let us know why you're here. We appreciate that. The Urban League team will continue to drop information on resources that are mentioned on this show. And of course, you can find this and every other episode of the Digital Career Success Series on our YouTube channel. Ryan, let's talk about building trust and connection.
So the way I look at mentorship, it could be either formal or informal. We've always, all of us can maybe relate to maybe reaching out to someone to ask some words of advice or encouragement, right? But there's also more formalized processes. Hey, can you be my mentor? I need support in X area, right? I want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, or I want to expand my business, or I want to, get into a certain field, right? I want to expand my skills as a leader. Whatever that is, there's obviously a more formal process as well. But ultimately, I think before we build trust and connection, vulnerability is essential, right? We have to be vulnerable to say, hey, I have a gap that I am trying to fill. And I'm going to trust that person, to help me, fill this gap. But I have to first be vulnerable. I have to first be open and honest. And I have to recognize, there's some areas in which I want to improve, maybe personally or professionally, right? So that vulnerability piece, I think being able to find someone that you can be vulnerable and open with, is also essential with building a trust and connection.
No, but let's stay here for a second, because if you talk about vulnerability and kind of trust, you have to be kind of talking about goal setting, right? If you're approaching someone as a mentor, that probably means that you have goals. So let's talk about goal setting and accountability. Next slide, please. So as we just explore goal setting and accountability, we're talking about mentors and mentees, right? They're setting clear goals. And Brian, I know your work in the clinical setting and just your work in general requires you to hold people accountable. And sometimes that comes through goal setting, I would imagine.
Hmm. But that could be one way to look at it. But I guess the way I look at, goal setting, we need to know, where are we going, right? What is the purpose of this mentorship relationship? A lot of people, for instance, reach out to me maybe on LinkedIn, or they see maybe things that I do in the media, and they say, hey, I want to, start my own business, right? Hey, can I talk to you about that? But sometimes when we engage in this conversation, there's no like outcome, there's no goal. They're just trying to pick my brain, and that's fine, right? But I think more when we use a formalized process, we need to identify, hey, where are you at now, and where do you want to go? And how can I serve as a support to help you get to where you want to go? All right. So there has to be more, like, we can use SMART goals, right? Something that's specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, and timely. Okay. Maybe you want to, start a new business venture, right? Okay. When do you want to accomplish that by, right? How do you know that you reach success? And how do we measure that and track progress? Okay, that's also important. And then also mentors need to, be that accountability partner, right? And they need to recognize that they can't do the work for the mentee. Okay, so the mentee has to do their work on their own, right? And the mentor's job could be, hey, I just want to follow up to see if you've been able to accomplish those SMART goals that we've talked about, right? So we have to recognize that the mentorship type of process is bi-directional. Okay, as a mentor, maybe I'm getting my needs satisfied, right? Because I'm giving back to someone, right? And also the mentee is obtaining that benefit, right, by being able to get that coaching and that accountability, right? So looking at it that way could be helpful with when we think about goal setting and accountability. I'd be curious to learn more about, Keisha and your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, well, you said a couple of words that really rang out to me, that got me excited. Purpose, like purposeful conversations, right? And when we're goal setting, we want to be purposeful. The passion piece, right? You have to know exactly or have an idea of what you're passionate about, right? The how or what or where, that's what the mentor is going to help you to do. But knowing what you're passionate about is super important. And the third piece is strategic, right? And the strategy of how you're going to set these goals and the accountability that you'll have with your partner. The things that we're mentioning to some folks that are listening, this may sound really easy and simple, and they could do it in their sleep. And others are going to need a combination of folks to help them. So you have people who are coaches like myself, that partner with people who are therapists like Ryan, and that get you to the point where you can truly put those two pieces together, right? Which is thinking about like, what is the goal of this relationship? Where do we see it going forward? What is the ideal state, right? What are we working toward together? Where can we celebrate each other in this mentorship relationship? Celebration is really important. And how do we hold each other accountable? So when we don't do the things that we set out to do, or fear or timing or something comes up and we don't get there, then how do we hold each other accountable to getting to the mission and the vision that we set in the beginning?
Accountability. So Keisha, let's talk about this. Let's just stay in the corporate space with you here, right? So I know you do project management. I know that you coach. I know that you're actively just a part of the organizational culture. How do you make sure that individuals' goals within your organization are aligned with the organizational goals, right? As they're setting their personal map, as they're mapping their career plans, how do you kind of will that in and give information that what maybe aligns with the organization? You're walking right in the middle of that in a sense.
Yeah, from the very beginning, right? And so whenever we set a goal from the beginning, does this match the mission and vision of the organization, right? So at Microsoft, our mission and vision is to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. So is what we're doing aligned to that vision? We also have cultural vision and missions, right? Are we literally having an opportunity to create a diverse and inclusive environment, right? Are we doing what is going to be best for the culture and the atmosphere of the relationship and of where we work, right? And so when you start with that in mind, it makes the continuation of accountability and the process of creating the project really seamless, because it always goes back. So every time you seem to, like, if you're any project management folks out there, when you have that scope creep, when you're starting to move out into other areas and like all of a sudden this thing has like limbs and leaves and you're like, wait a minute, it helps as soon as you go back to what is the original mission, right? Does this go back to the vision? What else is important too for anyone who's early in career or even now with all these new forms of technology, right? Writing everything, super important for accountability purposes.
Talk to me
Yeah.
Talk to me a little more about that.
So I'm not gonna lie to you, I am definitely Christian. So, as the Bible says, write it down, make it plain at 100%. That's kind of my initial instinct when you ask that question. But truly in a corporate setting, when we're thinking about that, we want to be able to create our project management plan. Or in a mentor-mentee relationship, you do want to create the plan. You want to start with what the goal is, right? What are the milestones? What does success look like? You want to be able to write those things. And I think before AI was here, a lot of us may have been a little intimidated, right? To be able to write exactly what we were looking to achieve, but definitely use the tools that are out there. You can use people as tools, like those that are in your mentorship circle, to ask them for feedback on what you wrote, or you can utilize technology like AI, Copilot, and those tools to be able to say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, help me to get more concise. And so once you put together this plan, you want to share it with others. So it's one thing when you write it and have it for yourself, but it's another when you share it with someone and they can help hold you accountable and go back to the goal, always revisiting, making sure you're checking in with the goal every, whatever your cadence will be, every quarter, every 2 weeks. Some folks need to look every day to remind themselves.
Man, you're really good. I caught that Copilot plug. Just tell everybody what that is real quick.
So Copilot is a Microsoft technology that everyone can kind of figure out on their own the best ways to use it. It can be used in your everyday life, right? Whether you're trying to figure out the best way to get these 8-week twins to take a nap, or how you want to teach them a second language early, or if you want to use it for creating business plans like the ones that we just spoke about. It's infused in a lot of our technology. It's not meant to necessarily take over and to do things on its own, but it's a co-pilot. It's right next to you. It's here to help guide you as you go forward.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so very much. Ryan, I want to speak about inclusive mentorship. I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking that our mentors have to be exactly like us in industry, in career, right? Maybe even in ethnicity or race, right? Sometimes we just believe, well, there's no Black men here, I don't have any mentors. That's not the case, correct?
So the way I look at mentorship, I always encourage individuals to have diverse mentors on their quote unquote mentorship team. Okay. So for me, as an entrepreneur, also as a consultant, I have mentors in various industries. I have business mentors. I have mentors who do very similar work like myself, diverse equity inclusion professionals, or those who promote wellness in organizations, I also have mentors that are, CPAs. I have mentors who are in finance, right? And in turn, that helps enhance my diversity of perspective to help me be better and strengthen my personal and professional development. So research shows that, when we're able to interact with those who look like us, who have very similar experiences and backgrounds, then, it's easier to create rapport. However, what research also shows is if that mentor brings a level of cultural competence and cultural awareness, then we can also create rapport just as well. Okay, even if they come from different backgrounds, different skin colors, different sexual orientations, different religious, backgrounds, et cetera. Okay, so it's important, number one, that the mentor be aware of these cultural differences. It's also important for the mentee to be open, when seeking out mentorship, and also recognize that just because it's not a good fit with one person doesn't mean, you will never find, that person that may be a good fit for you. So I don't know about you, but when I go shopping, right, if a shirt that I really like doesn't fit, that doesn't mean I just don't wear shirts anymore. I just go to a different store, right? So we ultimately have to, recognize that, this is a journey, finding that right fit for us, but also being open, when it comes to the type of mentor that we want to seek out is important too. And obviously it should be in alignment with our goals, and where we want to go for the future.
So let's reverse engineer that a little, right? So that was coming from the voice of someone seeking mentorship. As someone that's a mentor and they're seeking to provide more value to others, what should be their approach in inclusive mentorship?
So I would think about, do I have the skills, the experience, the knowledge, the background to help this person achieve their goals, right? And if I can't, maybe I can put them in contact with somebody in my network, right? But no matter, their background or, where they come from, I need to identify, can I provide value? Okay, that's number one, that's important. And then also I need to take in consideration their diversity of perspective, their diversity of experience. So I may sit down with another Black male who looks just like me, but I can't assume that his experience is going to be the exact same as mine, you know? Even though I know research shows that, Black men may experience certain challenges, in the workplace, right? I still need to ask about his experiences. Hey, I went through this. I'm curious. Did you experience this as well? Do you have a different perspective, right? So not assuming, right? Especially if someone looks like you, assuming their background, assuming their experience, that's essential, right? So asking those questions, asking open-ended questions, engaging in empathy and trying to take yourself out of your perspective sometimes and put yourself in their shoes, that's going to be essential with inclusive mentorship.
I love it. Keisha, Ryan just spoke about empathy, and I always go to emotional intelligence and things of that nature. So as people start to navigate this space, so say someone's coming into your organization and they're new and they've completed the onboarding process and they're looking for places culturally within the organization where they fit in. They're looking for places professionally where they fit in. So they start seeking out maybe ERG or BRG. I know at Microsoft, you guys have a pretty robust, it's a BAM, right? Is it still BAM?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I know you guys have a pretty robust business resource group, employee resource group environment. Talk to us about what individuals should be doing or seeking when they come into those networks as it relates to mentorship.
So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, you definitely want to think about our employee resource groups as a way, especially if you're more introverted sometimes, because if you think about it, finding a leader that you'd like to have as your mentor and, approaching them with not necessarily like that business case, like directly there, can be kind of intimidating. But once you join an employee resource group, it's literally a group, right? It's a group of folks who may have, like Ryan mentioned and you mentioned, some type of tying quality to each other. So when we think of like Blacks at Microsoft, like you mentioned, or women at Microsoft, like there's something that's identifying there. Allyship is really huge these days too. When you think about joining employee resource groups, they're exactly what we just chatted about too, in terms of like learning from others can happen really well when you join other employee resource groups, organizations. When you join an employee resource group, one thing I think that for me, this is my personal opinion, that I think is really amazing is when you truly get involved in the programming. So when you think about like creating mentorship relationships, thinking about how you can bring leaders that would help affect you in your career, how would it help how many others, right, that would be affected as well? So how do you create programming in your employee resource group that will not only benefit you, but it helps to benefit multiple people? So joining an employee resource group, that's one space that I think is really important, as well as being socially active with the folks that are there. Some relationships, like Ryan mentioned, are truly professional relationships, but then we do have a need as human individuals, right, to start to build personal relationships, right? People we've worked with for years. And how do those relationships start? Sometimes in this hybrid work environment, they can start by using like Teams calls or Zoom calls, but then also it can also happen when you actually go to events that are being held by an ERG, right? It can go from like social app happy hours or chat and choose, as some places may call it, where you can get to speak and eat with others, breaking bread and fellowship.
So you're, I didn't think about this until you mentioned it, but you're with, one of the largest tech organizations in the world. So as you start to view opportunities to network and opportunities to find mentors, sponsors, does that change when you're in that environment? Like if you're working that at technical meetups, right? At tech meetups, so meetups on Teams versus a face-to-face. Like I know you're in Atlanta, but you guys have offices and you support divisions and parts of the organization across the globe, I would imagine. So how do you manage to navigate that and build relationships in that setting?
So building relationships in a virtual world, it's similar, right? Because we do have those hybrid workplace environments. And so employee resource groups can have events that have not only an in-person aspect, but it still has an online aspect. And in that online environment, you can utilize chat rooms. You can get to hear there's a benefit too of being virtual. So on calls like this, when someone gets an opportunity to really hear a lot more from you, Kenneth, right? Or a lot more from Ryan, they can kind of get an understanding of if this person has a commonality with me. And so they could take the conversation offline, right? And they continue the mentorship relationship. And it's similar to like if you were at a dinner party and someone is speaking to you there and you're like, I'd love to continue the conversation. Can we chat? It's some of the same value propositions that are there that are available to you when you utilize online tools, like continuing the conversation via Teams or via Zoom or whatever platforms that you're using.
Great, great. It's the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series brought to you by the National Urban League. Our guest today, Dr. Ryan Warner, Keisha Beverly Evison. Ryan, we were speaking a little bit about the challenges of doing it virtually, but just in general, there tends to be challenges in anything that's kind of worth having, right? So within this mentorship cycle and spectrum, can we address some of the common challenges in mentorship, communication gaps, coaching expectations, things of that nature. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What is your advice to individuals?
So oftentimes, I think that we just assume when someone needs support that they're going to reach out. And I think this goes back to the vulnerability piece. There may be some individuals on this call today that are very introverted that may benefit from mentorship, but feel like they can't reach out, or maybe they're intimidated, by certain individuals that they look up to actually reach out for support, right? So I think that's one of the most significant challenges out there, right? Is learning how to use your voice to ask for support. But then when you're able to push through that and jump that barrier, I think follow up and maintaining a relationship and also making it seem that it's not, make sure it's not transactional, I think can also be challenging as well. So I think with me, I look back at my experience, I've had phenomenal mentors that helped me get to where I am today. And if I didn't reach out to them, if I didn't, take that proactive approach, who knows where I would be. So I think I struggle with the most is how do I continue that relationship after I get my need met, after they support me? How do I follow up in 3, 4, 5 years, right? How do I ensure that I'm, maintaining that connection? So what I do is I try to provide like yearly updates. So for instance, mentors that I had back in my master's program or my PhD program, I'll reach out to them like when it comes to the new year or right before the new year and say, hey, I hope your year went well. Here's some updates in my life. I hope your family is well. I'll ask questions about, either their family or what they're doing in their personal life to maintain that connection. It could be via email, it could be via text. But that's what I try to do at the top of each year. I always try to continue those long lasting relationships.
Hey,
So, yeah.
I remember we were having a conversation and you were sharing with me, I'm not going to say it was an imposter syndrome moment, but you were sharing with me about how important it was that you had somebody behind you encouraging you to continue on educationally, right, into your master's and PhD programs. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that story and that experience from the lens of a mentor or
Mhm.
mentee, should I say?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, my academic and professional trajectory has not been linear at all. I've gone step by step and ultimately, found my way through, asking questions, through being inquisitive, through, those individuals who were in my life. So I remember it was I'll fast forward to my PhD program. I really didn't know what I wanted to after. I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to help improve wellness. But I didn't really know how that would look. So actually, when I was dating my now wife, we went to her family reunion when we were like a year into our relationship. And I remember I met her cousin, and her cousin was an Army psychologist. And he was like, "Oh, you're seeking your PhD program. Hey, have you ever thought about the military?" And I never even heard about military psychologists. I didn't even know what that was. And he was like, "Hey, you can learn how to be a leader. You can work with top level leaders in our armed forces, and you can ultimately, leave the your career, and you can be ultimately set up to do whatever you want to do in life." So I was like, "Hey, that's a cool opportunity." And then I reached out, and then fast forward, I was active duty for 4 years and, got out, right? So I wouldn't even thought about that opportunity if I wasn't exposed to it. So I think recognizing that mentors, can have a monumental impact, on your entire trajectory of life. And, I think as a mentor myself, and as a mentee, I don't take that lightly at all. But being able to first anticipate that number one, follow-up can be challenging. Number two, being vulnerable can also be difficult. And also number three, knowing what questions to ask, can be really hard as well. And knowing who to seek out. Should I seek out someone who looks like me, who's in the particular field that I'm in? Should I, maybe I don't know what I want to do, right? Maybe I want to do a career change, but I'm not sure how that would look, right? So I think being able to engage in introspection and asking yourself those tough questions can ultimately help guide your actions and guide who you reach out to.
Exceptional. Keisha, Ryan's talking about, navigating expectations and things of that nature, right? So as you sit and you provide coaching to members of your organization and you kind of work in the space that you work in, how do you advise them on addressing communication gaps or expectation conflicts and things of that nature. You have to be very real with people, I would imagine.
Yeah, you definitely have to be really honest and upfront and direct, right? And so when you feel like the communication may be broken, as soon as you feel like it may be broken, it's broken, right? That's the first piece. The second piece is you want to be direct in the feedback that you're giving to the person that you're working with. Like, hey, I feel like we can communicate more effectively. Here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Here's where I think the gaps are. So you want to be thoughtful. Thoughtfulness goes such a long way in all of the relationships that we're talking about here today. You want to make sure that you really think through what are the missing pieces, how can I add to those pieces, and how can I make the relationship even stronger. Ryan mentioned the piece about like the mentors that he's had, and I can honestly tell you, Kenneth, from where I sit, I wouldn't be sitting here, right, if it wasn't for 100% of the mentors that have been there for me, especially at Microsoft from the very beginning, all the way through. And those mentors that I've had, again, like we talked about the allyship piece, allyship is so important because I really had to seek out people who were identified in the spaces that I wanted to be in, and they didn't always look like me. And so there too, there were communication gaps that I needed to make sure that I wasn't creating on my own, right? Like by not sharing exactly what I wanted to say because I had a fear of what they would hear when I said it. So I got really good at over the years being so upfront and honest when I got into the room and we closed the door by saying, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be honest. Let me be direct. All of those like opening statements really allow you like the relaxation of being able to just get to where you need to go when you're navigating conversations with people where there could be challenges.
Man, you were speaking about vulnerability. I want to stay here before we go back to Ryan, but how do you, so you're working through your mentee mentorship relationship on either side of this, Keisha. What happens when you realize that maybe this isn't the person? What is that process, and then how do you resolve that? How do you step away from that mentor mentee relationship if you really are feeling like maybe you're not getting anything from it, or maybe it's just not a person that you're comfortable with in that setting?
Right. So a person that you're not comfortable with, that's one type of relationship issue or concern. And so like dissolving that partnership up front is really smart, right? So you want to go ahead and say, hey, you want to be honest. Like initially, I thought this is where we could go. Unfortunately, this is not, where we're heading in that direction. And then, dissolve the partnership, right? You don't want to walk away, especially in professional environments, and like ghosting your mentor or mentee, and then they don't know what happened to you, right? You want to be upfront, and it's going to give you the clarity you need. Now, on the other side of things, when you're in a relationship and you're figuring things out, some relationships take time to figure out. And initially, you can go to someone and I could say, hey, Ryan, I would love for you to mentor me on getting my PhD. Right. And Ryan says, sure, I'll do just that. But in that relationship, things can change. I could say, you know what, Ryan, you actually are a strong mentor in like figuring out how to like budget my, time. And so like that's a better space that I would rather get mentorship for you from on like my time management than my PhD program. Because now looking back at it, my PhD program is already, pretty much situated by school, and I'm just going to follow along here. But what I do value from you is this. So hopefully in some of your mentor-mentee relationships, when the initial ask or reason for the relationship isn't continuous, then you can figure out how can this person help bring me along my way. It takes all sorts of people to make up this world, and everyone has a gift and talent. What is the talent that that person could potentially give to you if the relationship is in a positive manner? Because we talked about the opposite, which is something that's not positive, and that way you would have to dissolve. But if it's positive, what is the space?
Wow, that's a great point you make, right? Just kind of reassessing the relationship and finding out what you can salvage out of it. Ryan, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would like to add, one thought I was having was oftentimes we think a mentorship relationship is like a power dynamic. You have mentor here, you have mentee down here, right? The mentee is always trying to learn from the mentor. However, I would encourage individuals to think a little bit more multifacetedly about like we can recognize that, yeah, the mentee is obviously obtaining data, information, knowledge, expertise from the mentor. However, the mentor can learn a lot from the mentee. I've been in relationships in which I've learned a lot, from my mentees, and in turn, that's enhanced my growth, and my, diversity of thought, right? So I think that's important to recognize that not only are we giving as a mentor, we're also receiving, okay? I'm receiving, my need is being filled because, hey, I'm really feel like my purpose, my why is to give back, is to, share my information with others so that they can also succeed. And also, the other need I'm getting filled is learning from their experience, right? To enhance my perspective. So that were just some thoughts that I had as well regarding this topic.
Now, I love it because you spoke about needs, and sometimes we need practical mentorship resources. So I'd like to kind of speak a little bit about, some resources that may be out there that you guys have utilized or that you recommend as valuable in the space to support individuals as they walk this mentorship mentee relationship on either side, right? As mentee or as mentor. Any any resources, Keisha, that come immediately to mind as you think about this conversation?
Yeah, so I loved when I read the Memo by Minda Hart. Like that was one of the best books that I read a while back, and it still holds true today. I think that's a great resource for anyone looking for a practical book to read. There's that. I know that myself. I post articles on LinkedIn. I do that twice a month or so. There's lots of information there, and on LinkedIn, which is a true resource when you're looking for information around mentorship and building mentorship relationships as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Shout out to Minda Harts. Listen, she was actually on the Digital Career Success Series. It was quite some time ago. Maybe we can drop that link in the chat. You can find Minda's Digital Career Success Series and all of the DCS Success Series on the Urban League Jobs Network YouTube channel. This one today should probably be there later in the week. So yeah, please tap in there to gather some really valuable information. So Minda's books have been a great resource to many. I actually gave them away as Christmas gifts to a lot of the members of my family when she came out with the Memo. She literally thought I was supporting her, but I was just really trying to provide a great resource for a lot of the people that are special to me in my life. So thank you for bringing up Minda's book. Anything else, Keisha, that you kind of lean on, or maybe things that you've seen others use to serve as resources for their mentorship journey?
I'll also say this, because especially because it looks like I'm at home, but I'm in the office today. Like the managers that you work with, right? Your partners at work, lean in there, ask questions like to your colleagues, like around mentorship and how they're developing those relationships. Utilize the folks that you work with. I think that's a really good opportunity. We talked a little bit about employee resource groups, and then especially thinking about the National Urban League. I know I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and so we definitely within our organizations, within our own community as African Americans, there are resources there for us as well. Those that have been through the process of creating a mentorship relationship and being a mentor, and the encouragement that comes with saying to someone, "Can I be your mentor?" Like, I think that's the challenge for all of us after this call is not only receiving the relationship from a mentor, but saying to someone, "Can I be your mentor?"
Yeah, shout out to the Deltas and all the D9 representatives because I see they're actively providing opportunities for mentees as well. They're out here supporting the professional development of a younger generation. So that's great work and great advice there. Ryan, as I present the same question to you, practical mentorship resources that you value or that you've seen that you believe can add value to others.
Well, first, I would want to start with LinkedIn. LinkedIn has what, 900 million users across the globe. And I actually have found one of my closest mentors to this day. And he started off as a mentor. Now he's a colleague. Now we do business together. And in turn, I just randomly reached out to him. Hey, I know you don't know me, right? We have similar background. It'd be nice to, grab a virtual coffee so I can get to know you better. And in turn, years later, we've done a lot of business together, and or been able to maintain that relationship. So number one, I think identifying where do you want to go for the future and who's doing what you want to do. You know, whether that be working at Microsoft, like Keisha, whether it be involved in entrepreneurship like myself. Being able to identify that person, just reach out to them. That's number one practical type of tip. Number two, for those who want to get into entrepreneurship, SCORE Mentorship is a phenomenal resource. So you just type in Google SCORE Mentorship, and they offer free business mentoring. And it's really helpful because number one, you get to pick the brains of those who are very successful, in business, whether it be finance, whether it be in consulting, whether it be, in whatever industry, that you want to work in. So you'll be able to obtain that advice from them, and they just want to give back their time. They're volunteers, and most of them are retired. And then ultimately they just want to, give back, to the future generation, so and the future leaders out there. So being able to reach out to that mentorship, platform is important. Lastly, for anyone who wants to learn more about consulting and learn more about how to improve wellness and inclusion within workplaces, my consulting company, RC Warner Consulting, offers an internship program. And that is a way for me to give back my time to ultimately support future leaders within, my particular field. And we've had at least 4 classes of interns thus far. So we always have a summer class, a fall class, spring class, and ultimately you get to work on projects, within my company and work with organizations across the globe to enhance their performance through management consulting, executive coaching, and also leadership type of training. So feel free to reach out to me via rcwarnerconsulting.com. So those are just some practical type of resources out there that could be helpful.
You know what, we appreciate that. And I think all of those are really viable resources. I know Keisha had mentioned the Urban League, and if it's not the National Urban League, the Urban League has a ton of, I think it's 90 plus chapters in cities around the country, affiliate Urban League chapters. So I know at the Urban League of Philadelphia, I used to do consulting for them. And at the New York Urban League, I know they have programs where their young professionals are really active in supporting one another, but also just general constituents of the Urban League family always offer back and provide mentorship to individuals that kind of go through that ecosystem. Beep, Kendall does a great job of just providing support to young future executives that run through that program. And I just think, sometimes we're in a place now where we have so much information in front of us, and you would be remiss if you didn't just use standard searches to identify not only individuals, but organizations to provide that type of structure to your career path. To Ryan's point, pretty much any vertical, any industry that you're looking to pursue, there's probably a professional organization that supports those individuals. So please don't hesitate, don't be shy, do your research, and then funnel that down and connect with people on LinkedIn, as Ryan had mentioned, and maybe have a virtual coffee, maybe just have a virtual conversation. And sometimes it's not just about the ask, but you should probably offer to be some support as well. You don't want to always, Carla Baptiste of the Urban League of Philadelphia used to always say, instead of going out with your hands if you're asking for something, go out with your hands as you're shaking hands and trying to partner for everyone's greater being. So with that being said, I'd like to go into the Q&A. We'll move into Q&A now. So Ryan and Keisha, we have a really active audience here on the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series platform. I know one of the questions that came in was if you guys could provide tips on identifying mentorships when working in a remote environment. Sometimes people just working in those remote and hybrid spaces, they don't build the relationships or get the opportunities to build some of the relationships that you could build on a day-to-day, face-to-face environment. So with that being said, Keisha, any advice on how individuals can continue to build relationships in a remote and/or hybrid environment?
Yeah, and so in a hybrid environment, so first of all, you can leave your hybrid environment sometimes, right? And so that's number one. So the first piece is if we have to do it remotely and we want to do it at work, you want to start to go to some of, like we mentioned, some of those events that have the capability for you to meet others via the Teams channels or the Zoom channels and be able to use the chat to communicate with folks. The second piece to that is if you join those meetups that are out there, there are tons of opportunities. I know the Urban League, especially when I lived in the Seattle area, the Seattle Young Professional Urban League organization always had opportunities for like after hours meetups and conversations. That might be a good space and a place to be able to create that mentorship dynamic. We talked a lot about LinkedIn. Here's the thing. I'm going to give you like a little bit of a path to help you out to figure out how to do this. The first thing you want to do potentially, and this could work for you, is if you start to create your group, which is your network, right? Your tribe of people that you're actually trying to get to know. So you join a meetup group or you join a group on LinkedIn of folks that are in a similar space or what you're interested in. Once you get into that tribe, once you get into that network, or once you get into that group, the next space is to really start to seek out individuals and kind of see what people are saying in the chat rooms, what articles people are posting, seeing like where they're going, so you can kind of identify to get them to know them a little bit better. Then you want to introduce yourself too, right? And so, as we mentioned, relationships go two ways. Someone can also seek you out, but you can seek out someone. So once you start to seek out someone and share who you are, now you've got a pattern going. So now you're building a relationship. And so it can start off with one big group, followed by getting to know someone individually based on what they're posting and how you're interacting with them, and then sharing who you are, and then taking the relationship, into that mentorship dynamic.
Ryan, anything to add to that?
I think, yeah, Keisha touched on everything. I mean, that was great. Nothing to add on my end.
Okay, so Ryan, I have a question for you that came in through the Q&A. How do you assess if a membership is a good fit? I know we talked a little bit about it, but maybe we need to add a little more to that conversation. Would you please?
So I think number one, interviewing mentors prior to asking them to be a mentor, I think is important, right? We can look at their background, look at their LinkedIn, but we have to ensure that, hey, can we vibe together, right? Do our personalities match? Do I feel comfortable when I talk to you, right? Nobody wants to talk to someone that they feel uncomfortable with, right? It doesn't matter how, successful they are in that particular domain. So I think that, yeah, being able to assess that, shop around a little bit, identify what's a good fit is important. And then also, how invested is that mentor in supporting you? Sometimes, there are individuals out there that they don't know how to say no. So they'll just say yes, and then they'll be overwhelmed, and then they won't follow through. And then they won't even have time to meet, right? So ensuring does that mentor even have the capacity to support you? And if so, what does that capacity look like? Maybe they can meet with you every week, but maybe they can meet with you once a quarter or once a month, right? So being able to ensure that you're in the same terms with that mentor is essential as well. So yeah, again, shop around, try to identify what's the best fit for you, try to identify, can that individual meet your particular needs? And yeah, ensure that there's a level of comfort, level of openness, and a level of trust.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm looking at this question here in the Q&A, basically, and the person is attending this from Ohio, so shout out to Ohio. We were actually in Columbus a few years back for the National Urban League Conference, great city, but they run a charity organization, and what they're wondering is, if they can get a mentorship relationship with you guys, or are there resources that will allow them to take their organization to the next level? So Ryan, I want to stay here with you because you spoke about SCORE, and maybe you can take a deeper dive into your specific experiences and the ways that they are able to help individuals kind of grow and advance and scale.
Yes. Yeah. So for those interested in business or entrepreneurship, ultimately you can go and SCORE mentorship, sign up, get an account, and ultimately you can filter by what you're looking for. So for instance, before I actually hired a CPA, I wanted to identify, hey, what should I look for in a CPA? Hey, what's some things that I should keep in mind when preparing taxes, et cetera. So I actually found a CPA that was a mentor on SCORE, and they were able to give me free advice. They were able to say, hey, if you're interested in the CPA, a CPA should help you this way. And this is, tax strategy, and that's why important, and so they were able to give me all this information and knowledge to ultimately I helped utilize to find, that CPA that I ultimately hired, right? So Right there, that would have cost me probably thousands of dollars, just to get that support, and I was able to get for free, right? So recognizing again, what's that need? Hey, I didn't really know about taxes and tax planning and, how I can, lower my taxes, through business ownership, right? And in turn, they were able to build that foundation for me, right? So that's an example. Personally, I like to have mentors in various sectors to support me in my needs. So maybe a financial mentor, a tax strategy mentor, a mentor who's doing similar work as myself, maybe a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert, wellness expert. And in turn, I built that team and be able to help build that foundation in each one of those domains. So I encourage everyone to recognize that you don't just need to maybe have one mentor, maybe having multiple to help you in various areas could be helpful. And again, it may be a one-time meeting that you meet with that person. It may be ongoing, right? Every relationship is different. But yeah, that's my 2 cents about that.
Well, we appreciate it. I want to also throw in for the individual from Ohio that had the question, I'm not sure about the Columbus Urban League. I know it's a robust group. I know they have a lot of resources, but I do know for a fact that if you're looking to tap into business support, the New York Urban League has the Small Business Solutions Center, ran by Gina Rancheram. They're doing great work. I was on one of their events last week. So that could be a resource for you. Also, the Urban League of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Urban League, Keith Ellison leads the Entrepreneurship Center over there. And there are several urban leagues that have entrepreneurship centers. Find one, tap in. I don't think geography bears any weight in that conversation. I think you can tap in and access resources that can help you kind of scale and support and advance your business. So once again, Gina Ramcharan from the New York Urban League, Keith Ellison, the Urban League of Philadelphia. The Urban League in general has an entrepreneurship center program that can provide that type of support for you. All right, Keisha, I want to talk to you about this. This is a big conversation now in the world that we live in, people making career pivots. So as a coach at an organization and someone comes in to speak to you and they're like, hey, I've been working on this side of the business. I really believe that it's time for me to make a pivot for whatever reason. How do I attract the attention of individuals on the other side or the place that I'm looking to go, even if it's external, right? I'm just saying, not take your Microsoft hat off for a quick second, right? But even if it's even if it's external, what's your advice on people that maybe need to connect and get mentors that are outside of the work that they're doing now, right? Like really being intentional because they're looking to make advancements in another career path.
Typically, those folks that come to me with those types of conversations have done their own personal research, right? Which is like, I think this is what I want to do. I feel like really passionate about it. And I think that's the first step, right? Really taking the opportunity to think about like, is this what I want to do and why? Why do I want to do it? And am I running away from something or running to something that I've been dreaming about for a long time? A lot of people these days are going into roles and opportunities that are fulfilling for them. And so that's a positive thing when you're thinking that way. The next step I always say too is like, let's take inventory of the great work you've done. So this is where it takes time, and a lot of people call it a walking deck, or they call it like just like a self-evaluation sheet. But let's talk about the impact that you've had in your organization. What are the top things that you're really doing well, right? What are the things that you want to continue to do? What are the things that you've been like the bottom of your heart been desiring to do, but don't have the skills to do? Where's the stretch in that? And so really taking that opportunity and looking across and saying, all right, this is who I am. This is what I'm interested in doing. Here's how I could see myself influencing and impacting an organization, even if it's external to where I am. And so once you have that mindset of, okay, I know who I am, I know what I'm capable of and what I would like to experience in the future, it's time to get on the road. Right? It's time to start to have those conversations with leaders that are in that space, people who work in the space, or, we talked a lot about LinkedIn. It's time to start chatting online about the space. So starting to generate the energy around the company you're looking at or the industry you're looking to go into and just do it. Right? But what's really important before you do any of that is getting to the bottom of your why. and really understanding that, because it'll give you the energy you need when you're not getting the emails back right away, or you're not necessarily getting the attention that you thought you'd get once you announce that you're interested. You're going to need to be really grounded in trusting the process, taking your time, and getting to where your next steps are.
I want to add upon that really quick. So oftentimes there's a lot of individuals that may struggle with finding their why, Keisha, right? Like, it's hard for them to maybe think outside their current perspective. So I challenge individuals to remove those barriers at first, do a mental exercise, identify if you had a magic wand, okay, how would your life look? Okay, what would it look like? Don't think about what particular role or what organization, just in general, what would a fulfilling life look like for you? Okay, and then work your way backwards. Okay, what are some instances in my life in which I can focus on what's in my control to make that a reality or get closer to that goal, right? Maybe it's a fulfilling life for me is I want to spend more time with my children, right? Okay, let's look at the time I have in my schedule, right? Maybe I have too much in my schedule. What's in my control? Or maybe I can, manage my time a little bit better, right? So now I'm identifying first what is fulfilling life, and then I'm working backwards to ultimately mitigate the barriers and how that may impact my life, right? So, and then once you identify that why, then that's going to be helpful when you select those mentors, So just some practical type of maybe strategies to implement to help you accomplish that.
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say, sorry, Kenneth, but Ryan hit the nail on the head, too. When, like, as a therapist, like that type of work really is essential.
Indeed. And we will take those two last statements as our closing remarks for our show today. I'd like to thank our guests, of course, Keisha Beverly Ebison and Dr. Ryan Warner. I want to thank both of you so very much for being amazing today. Mentorship Dynamics. If you're looking to stay connected with the work of Keisha Beverly Ebison, Senior Project Manager at Microsoft, please don't hesitate to connect with her on LinkedIn. Ryan just told you guys that LinkedIn was the place to go. So please feel free to connect with Keisha on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with Ryan, ton of places you can lock in with him, but I think that rcwarnerconsulting.com probably provides you links to all the other stuff. He has a speaker demo here in the link, and actually a Black news channel. So I'm excited about diving into that myself. And you can catch him on the Black Box App podcast as well. Download the app. If you're looking to stay connected to the things and the work that I'm doing here, Kenneth L. Johnson, just log into eastcoastexecutives.com, or you can come back here in 2 weeks and connect with me as we do the Advancement Accelerator. I'm really excited about this. I've been on events with Zakia Ali out of Delaware. She is amazing. And Terry Jones, of course, Harlem's own. He is a career coach, and he will bring exceptional information to this conversation, practical tips for setting and achieving your career goals. Listen, I want to thank our audience for joining us today for another impactful digital career success series. Please don't hesitate to lock in with our guests today, Keisha Ebison, Ryan Warner, two amazing professionals that are always looking to help. Again, I want to thank both of you for joining us and becoming a part of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series family. To our audience, thank you so very much. On behalf of the Urban League Jobs Network, Wanda Taylor, Corey O'Donnell, Dave Gannon backstage, and the whole team at the National Urban League helping us out here today and making us look good. I want to thank you all for just guiding us and keeping us on track. All right, I'll see you in 2 weeks, June 12th, Advancement Accelerator, Kenneth L. Johnson, Urban League Jobs Network, Digital Career Success Series. Thank you.